In ancient Rome, one idea was more dangerous than betraying the emperor, a toxic truth that could destroy the empire without a sword. While Rome trembled before the wrath of the gods, one man looked at the sky and saw nothing. His name was Lucretius, and he said the gods were never there at all. Thunder isn't a warning. Death is not a punishment. The universe doesn't care if you live or die. This was the most forbidden idea in history. They buried his words for 1,500 years, until now. If that sounds abstract, it isn't, because what Lucretius fought 2,000 years ago is still alive today. The fear that suffering has meaning, the fear that unseen forces are watching, the fear that death hangs over life like a sentence. Most people answered those fears with ritual, prayer, and obedience. Lucretius chose another path. He answered fear with reason, not with comfort, not with religion, not with promises, with understanding. That is what makes him so fascinating. Because this is not just a Roman story. It is the story of a man who stared into chaos and told people they could stop trembling. Lucretius lived as Rome began to crack. This was not a Rome of peace or marble perfection. This was a Rome splitting apart. Violence was rising. Ambition was everywhere. The Republic was collapsing. And in the middle of that chaos, Lucretius looked elsewhere, to the structure of reality, to the soul, to death, to the machinery of the universe, and to the question of why fear rules human life. And that is what makes him so mysterious. There is no full biography. No detailed record survives. He passes through history like a shadow. But that shadow left behind one great work, De Rerum Natura, a philosophical poem, a case against fear, a direct assault on terror. And this is where it turns dangerous. Lucretius was not writing poetry to entertain. He was writing to break the ancient mind. Lucretius was shaped by the Greek philosopher Epicurus. He believed people are ruined not by pain, but by false belief, by superstition, by stories of gods, fate, and death. Two fears rule human life: divine power and death. Lucretius believed those fears could be removed. But here's the twist: not spirituality, physics. He said everything is made of tiny particles in empty space. In other words, the world is made of atoms and void. No microscopes, no modern science, only motion. Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing disappears into nothing. Lightning is not a god's anger. Nature is not sending messages. Nature simply operates, and terror leaves the sky. But Lucretius did not stop there. Explaining nature was only the beginning. What came next was even harder to accept. Lucretius was not just saying the gods do not control storms or plagues. He was saying something worse. The universe was not made for us. The world was not built as a moral stage. It was not made to reward virtue or punish sin. To many people, that sounds bleak, cold, even cruel. But for Lucretius, this was freedom. Because if the universe is not a vast courtroom judging you, then many of your deepest fears begin to fall apart. You are not being singled out by cosmic anger. You are not living under supernatural watch. The world is larger than you, more indifferent than you want. And strangely, that indifference can be freeing. Once nature stops being a threat, it becomes something you can study, something you can understand, instead of fearing on your knees. Then Lucretius turned to the fear no one escapes: death. Here his writing turns sharp, almost merciless. His argument is simple. When you are alive, death is not here. When death arrives, you are not there. So why fear what you will never feel? To Lucretius, people torture themselves with imagined pain. They build prisons out of futures they will never live to feel. Death, in his view, is not endless torment. It is the end of sensation. And that makes it terrifying only while you can still imagine it. It is one of the boldest arguments in ancient philosophy. Not because it comforts, but because it refuses illusion. And this is the most dangerous part yet. Because once you remove the fear of divine punishment, and then remove the fear of death, you begin to strip away the two forces that kept societies obedient. That is what made Lucretius so explosive. He was not leading an army. He was not trying to overthrow Rome. But psychologically, what he was doing was revolutionary. You do not have to live in terror. You do not have to call disaster divine anger. You do not have to spend your life trembling. And if enough people believed that, something profound would change. Because fear is power. Fear keeps rituals alive. Fear keeps authority unquestioned. Fear keeps people compliant, humble, and easy to control. Lucretius was attacking fear at the root. Not by replacing fear, but by teaching people to think. He was not offering salvation. He was offering mental independence, and history rarely makes that easy. That was the moment it became a threat. An idea needs no sword to be dangerous. Sometimes it only needs to kill fear. For all his brilliance, Lucretius never became a household name, partly because his ideas were hard to absorb. And for long stretches of history, he nearly vanished. Think about that. One bold mind almost disappeared. His poem could have been lost, its arguments buried, but it survived. And when it returned, it sounded like a buried voice, saying something shockingly modern. Look at nature. Stop mythologizing terror. Stop imagining punishment in every shadow. Try to understand the world before surrendering to it. Lucretius did not create modern science, but he helped preserve the instinct behind it. The instinct to ask, to observe, to explain, and resist fear-based thinking. What makes Lucretius powerful is not that he feels modern. It is that he understood something timeless about human beings. We do not only suffer from pain, we suffer from interpretation, from panic, from imagination, from the stories we wrap around death, loss, and misfortune. We want the universe to explain itself in human terms. We want suffering to mean something. We want chaos to have intention. Lucretius refused to offer that comfort. Instead, he offered something harder: clarity. Maybe the universe is not here to comfort you. Maybe nature is not moral. Maybe death is not a theatrical punishment. Maybe reality is colder than the stories people prefer. But maybe that coldness is exactly what frees you. Because when fear loses its myth, it loses its power. And that was Lucretius's real gift. Not hope, not faith, liberation from terror. Lucretius did not promise heaven. He did not promise justice. He did not promise a kind universe. What he offered was harder than comfort. A world with no cosmic shelter. And a mind strong enough to live in it without fear. That is why he mattered. And maybe that is why he still feels dangerous. Some ideas do not threaten power by calling for rebellion. They threaten power by teaching people to stop trembling. Lucretius was one of those ideas. And once you see what he was really saying, fear does not feel quite the same again.